Hello folks, and welcome to a Wise Game video, where in today's video, I'm going to be covering the two expansions due to hit soon. So this is Wrath of the Lich King for Classic, and also Dragonflight for the retail game. The purpose of today's video is to see which expansion is the right one for you when it comes to PvP. Now keep in mind, it is very early. These games are not even released yet, and we don't know too much at this time when it comes to Dragonflight's PvP. But from what I have learned so far when it comes to Dragonflight's PvP, we should be able to at least give you an idea of which game is best for you. And I also have quite a bit of a background when it comes to the original Wrath of the Lich King when it comes to PvP. I had 2 toons fully arena geared and also achieved the Challenger title during Wrath of the Lich King. So with no further ado, let's dive in and give this a look. Now if you've seen some of my other videos in the past when it comes to PvP, I went over vendor locations, gearing and all that. I'm not going to go that deep in today's video. Basically, we're just going to look at topics like what kind of PvP stats are involved, and what is actually involved in both games to actually get the gear. Are you going to need ratings? And then of course some other topics that I'll cover as I go along in today's video. So now first, PvP stats. And when I say PvP stats, I mean like stats we've had in the past, like resilience, PvP power, and then in Shadowlands we had versatility, which I felt was a pretty weak PvP stat. So for Wrath of the Lich King Classic, they do have resilience. So they're still going to continue the resilience PvP stat going forward from the Burning Crusade. So basically what resilience does in Wrath of the Lich King is that it's going to do the same as we've seen in the Burning Crusade. So it's going to actually reduce the effects of critical strikes that are hitting you. So basically it boils down to each point of resilience will give a player about 1% less chance to be critical struck. So we could look forward to this PvP stat again in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. Now as far as Dragonflight goes, as far as I know, there is no PvP stat in the game. The gear is pretty much normalized in Dragonflight when it comes to stats. So until I learn more information about Dragonflight, I'm a guy that's a hands-on player. I can't even find a lot of information to even read at this time. So once we find out more about that, we will definitely update new videos in the near future. But as far as I know, the gear for PvP in Dragonflight will pretty much resemble that of PvE, say, raiding gear. But I understand, as we see here, is that in a PvP situation for Dragonflight, the person that actually obtained PvP gear from PvP, it will scale higher in PvP type situations. So again, for Wrath of the Lich King Classic, we should expect again the PvP stat of resilience. Where with Dragonflight, we are undetermined at this time if there is actually going to be a PvP stat added to the game. Next up, we're going to look at what's required in both games when it comes to actually getting the gear and weapons in the game from PvP. So first off, with Wrath of the Lich King Classic, that game's a little more intense. And what I mean by that is that you are going to be able to get some PvP gear in the game from honor alone, which is really good gear, like the Relentless gear. But keep in mind, there is no weapons given through PvP in Wrath of the Lich King without ratings. And then to get the top arena gear in the game, or PvP gear, it's usually called the Wrathful set. For most of these pieces, you are eventually going to need ratings for even the helmets, the shoulders, so on and so forth, and of course the weapons. And the ratings can be anywhere from say 700 all the way up to 2200. Now, if you ever played the past expansions called Mr. Pandaria and also Warlords of Draenor, in short, MOP and WOD, in those games, they did away with ratings. Now, you could still get ratings as a team or as players, but you did not need ratings when it came to getting the gear in the game, which was all conquest gear. And this also went for weapons. So basically, you had conquest gear in the game and you had honor gear. The only difference in these expansions when it came to somebody with the ratings was that they had cool looking transmogs. So their gear looked a lot more killer than somebody without the ratings, but the stats remained all the same. Well, this is what we're going to be getting in Dragonflight. So if you're somebody who feels like that the ratings may be something that's pretty difficult to get, Dragonflight may be a good option for you. Now let me see if I could word this correctly. So what's the incentive in players getting ratings in Dragonflight then? So looking at this article right here, when Bajira had spoken to Brian Holinka, who is the head developer when it comes to the PvP side of the games, that he says right here that the system is going to work very similar to WOD. It seems like that this is really what the player base wanted again. So Dragonflight, the PvP gear will have a PvE and PvP item level. In PvP, all conquest gear will be the same item level, equivalent to that of Mythic Raid gear. However, outside of PvP, the gear will have a similar system to Shadowlands, starting with the base item level, upgradable with honor, and unlocked with ratings. These upgrades will have no effect at all when it comes to PvP, only when it comes to PvE item level of items. What I'm getting from this, you could use the same set of gear for both raids and PvP in the game, except if you do get the ratings, the item level is going to go higher in a raid situation, but not in PvP. Which I mentioned in one of my past videos, which is pretty cool because now it's going to be mainly all skill driven when it comes to PvP if everybody has the conquest gear. So to recap and wrap this segment up, Wrath of the Lich King, you will need the arena ratings to get the top gear in the game and also the weapons. Whereas in Dragonflight, it's going to be going back to the MOP and the WOD type situation where there's going to be no ratings required whatsoever to get your gear and weapons. But still getting the ratings through arenas and rated battlegrounds in Dragonflight is still going to give you PvP mounts, titles, and also an upgrade when it comes to your gear in a PvE raid situation. Next up, we're going to cover the content that's in both of these games when it comes to PvP. Now, of course, the retail game Dragonflight's going to win here because, Wrath of the Lich King was only the third expansion. And as each expansion was added to the game over its 18-year cycle, of course, the later games are going to have more content. So let's take a look next at what to expect when it comes to PvP content and what you can do in both Wrath of the Lich King and Dragonflight. Okay, so first up is Wrath of the Lich King when it comes to Classic. Now, in Wrath of the Lich King, they did add quite a few battlegrounds. Now, I'm just going to provide you guys with a list today and the newly added battlegrounds, and then also when it comes to the arenas. If you want more detailed information about Wrath of the Lich King PvP, I do have a video for that, which I will drop in the description panel of today's video, and also at the end of today's video. So first, the battlegrounds. Ever since Vanilla Classic WoW, we had Warsong Gulch, we had Arathi Basin, and we had Alteric Valley. Then in the Burning Crusade, they added Eye of the Storm. Now, what was added in Wrath of the Lich King, Strand of the Ancients, and Isle of Conquest. I actually did forget in my other video that they did add Isle of Conquest during Wrath of the Lich King. And then they added a new type of battleground called an outdoor PvP, which is called Lake Wintergrasp. And this was a very large battleground. And this took place every 2.5 hours on your server. Now, the cool thing about Wintergrasp was that it's an excellent source of making honor points per week. because they have a good number of weekly quests, which can yield you anywhere from 3k to 4k of honor points per completion of the quest. And then whichever faction controls Wintergrass at that time also has access to the raid that's deep inside, which is called the Vaults of Occupon. And what's great about this raid is that there's either 3 or 4 bosses in there. I'm just going off the top of my head. But what's great about this is that these bosses drop both really good PvP gear plus PvE gear. So this is another way of getting PvP gear in the game. Now keep in mind, in the original Wrath of the Lich King, these 4 bosses was not available at the get-go. They were added over time with patches. So we'll have to see what Blizzard decides on doing when it comes to this, when it comes to the classic version of the game. Okay, next up is the arenas. And as most of us know, they started introducing arenas in the game during the Burning Crusade. So the 2 new arenas that they're going to add for Wrath of the Lich King is called Dalaran Arena, and also the Ring of Valor, which is located in Orgrimmar. Dalaran Arena is the one that's going to represent and kind of look like the sewer that we have in the basement of Dalaran. And the Ring of Valor is an arena with 2 floating, or I should say 2 pillars that go up and down, and it's got 2 rows of spikes that you have to avoid at any given time. So with the 3 arenas that we already had in the Burning Crusade and these 2 new arenas for Wrath of the Lich King, you're going to have 5 different arenas to play with now. And then also, if you're on a PvP server, we know how that goes. So you're also going to have open world PvP. So we could see, coming from Vanilla Classic to now, Wrath of the Lich King does offer quite a bit of PvP events to do within the game, which will scratch that itch if you're an avid PvP player. Okay, next up is the new retail game coming out soon called Dragonflight. Now, I'm not going to try to make this part too long. The main reason is because the game's not even released yet. And during the interview with Bajera and Brian Holinka, it was still throwing around some ideas that wasn't in concrete yet. So we're not sure what's going to be added when it comes to new PvP events for Dragonflight. But I can promise you one thing, there is tons to do in retail when it comes to PvP in World of Warcraft. Because now we're even going to have rated battlegrounds, which was introduced in Cataclysm. And Brian did mention that they are thinking of adding more weekly quests to the game when it comes to PvP again, like we had in Battle for Azeroth. But again, at this time, we don't know 100% sure yet. So now let's look at the battlegrounds that we could expect right up to this point. So I'm not even going to sit here naming them because there's so many of them. So we could see that there's tons of battlegrounds to do in the game. And then like 50% of these are also going to be used in RBGs, which is rated battlegrounds. And if you're somebody who loves to do arenas, look at this list. Okay, so Wrath of the Lich King had 5 total, and this list has many. And we could see here when they were added in each expansion. So if I counted this correctly, I got the count of 12. And again, we're still not sure if they're going to add any in Dragonflight. And then a couple of years back, they also made it now where the PvP is available on any server you play called War Mode. So you got that option too. If you like doing World PvP, you switch on War Mode, you're good to go. Okay, just to wrap up today's video, I just want to touch on a few more things, and then that's pretty much it. But instead of me taking a lot of time here and making this video much longer, I covered a lot of this information in other videos already, so I'm going to provide the links for those videos down below and also at the end screen of today's video. And the 2 topics I'm talking about is, one is called cross-faction, and the other one is called solo queue. Cross-faction actually came out in Shadowlands, which for certain situations, even PvE raids and PvP events, you're going to have the option of grouping up with a friend that plays the opposite faction. But in PvP, the only restriction is you can only use it in rated events, so arenas and rated battlegrounds. You cannot use this feature for random battlegrounds. And then the next one is what they call solo queue, and this is pretty cool. And from my understanding, is that this only works for threes. So if you want to do arena 3-man, you got the option of queuing up by yourself solo, and the game is going to give you 2 other players, which is fantastic for somebody who doesn't have a team or have their friends online at that given time. And these are actual rated arenas, being threes, that's going to give you the conquest points. And that's about it, folks. Okay, so looking at Wrath of the Lich King, it is a fantastic game for only being the 3rd game in the expansions. It does have quite a bit of PvP. It's definitely going to keep you busy. But just keep in mind, if you want to get the top gear in the game and the weapons when it comes to PvP, you are eventually going to need the ratings. In Shadowlands, you needed ratings to buy every piece of gear. And then for Dragonflight, we could see that that one's a little more casual when it comes to gearing up. You could actually get all the conquest gear in the game and the weapons with no ratings whatsoever. And of course, because the game's like almost 18 years old now, that it's going to have more options when it comes to PvP. Let's just face it, it's got a lot more battlegrounds, it's got random battlegrounds, it's got rated battlegrounds, it has more arenas. It has an option of going in and out on any server when it comes to World PvP, called War Mode. And then also what I just discussed between solo queuing and cross factions. If somebody went to ask me, what are you more psyched about? Which game are you more excited to play PvP-wise? Well, to be truthfully honest with you, if Dragonflight, if they end up sticking to their guns with Dragonflight, I think that that's the game I'm the most excited for. The only reason being is because I haven't played it yet. Wrath of the Lich King I've played many times, but Wrath of the Lich King is a fantastic game. So again, guys, I hope that this information helped and helps you when it comes to making up your mind of which game sounds like it's right up your alley. But again, you may want to try them. Things can always change too, from what we're saying now, because Dragonflight hasn't even been out yet. And sometimes they could make changes in classic games too, but hopefully not when it comes to the PvP system. So if you enjoyed this, feel free to sub up for more awesome videos coming your way. Give us a like, because that works too. All this helps in supporting the channel. And until the next time, you guys have yourself a fantastic day. Take care. Bye-bye.